Imagine a young woman, barely in her 20s, locked away in the Tower of London. Her future uncertain, her every move watched, and her very life hanging in the balance. This is not just any prisoner, but Elizabeth, daughter of the infamous Anne Boleyn and King Henry VIII, a princess by birth but a captive by circumstance. The cold stone walls echoed with the footsteps of guards, and the air was thick with suspicion and fear. Her own sister, Queen Mary, sat on the throne, gripped by paranoia and convinced that Elizabeth plotted against her. Family ties offered no protection in the brutal world of Tudor politics. Every day, Elizabeth wondered if it would be her last, haunted by the memory of her mother Anne Boleyn's execution. The shadow of the axe loomed over her, a constant reminder of how quickly favor could turn to fatal accusation. In this crucible of fear and uncertainty, Elizabeth learned caution, resilience, and the art of survival. She became a master of reading people, of saying just enough but never too much, and of hiding her true thoughts behind a mask of composure. While others at court dreamed of lavish feasts and glittering dances, Elizabeth's dreams were far simpler: freedom, safety, and the hope of seeing another sunrise. She knew that one careless word, one misplaced trust, could mean her death. Then, the impossible happened. Queen Mary died, and the prisoner in the Tower was suddenly declared Queen of England. The world shifted overnight, and Elizabeth stepped from the shadows of her cell into the blinding light of the throne. The weight of a divided, threatened nation now rested on her young shoulders. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a ruler, responsible for the fate of millions. England was poor, torn by religious conflict, and eyed hungrily by powerful neighbors like Spain and France. The threat of invasion and rebellion was ever present, and the country's future seemed as uncertain as Elizabeth's had once been. Elizabeth's journey from prison to palace is a testament to extraordinary resilience and adaptability. She transformed her suffering into strength, her isolation into insight, and her fear into determination. She could have been broken by her ordeal, but instead emerged with a sharp political mind and steely resolve. Every hardship had prepared her for the challenges ahead, shaping her into a monarch unlike any before her. Her rise was not just a personal victory, it signaled a new chapter for England. The people saw hope in her, a chance for stability and renewal after years of turmoil. Elizabeth had learned the hardest lessons in the harshest classroom imaginable. The Tower had been her teacher, and survival her curriculum. Now she was ready to rule, not just with royal authority, but with wisdom forged in adversity and a vision shaped by hardship. The girl who survived the Tower would become one of history's most legendary monarchs, forever remembered for her courage, intelligence, and the indomitable spirit that changed the fate of a nation. Elizabeth's life began with tragedy. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, was executed by her own father, King Henry VIII, when Elizabeth was just a toddler. In the aftermath, Elizabeth was declared illegitimate, stripped of her royal status, and left to navigate a world that suddenly seemed cold and uncertain. Cast out of court, she learned early that love and power were dangerously intertwined, and that trust could be a rare and costly thing. The royal court, once a place of comfort, became a landscape of shifting alliances and hidden threats. Growing up in the shadows, shuffled between households and guardians, Elizabeth became a master observer. She watched, listened, and learned, surviving by her wits and her ability to read the intentions of those around her. Every day was a lesson in caution and resilience. Her relationship with her half-sister Mary was fraught with tension and suspicion, a constant reminder of the dangers that came with royal blood. Mary, a devout Catholic and the daughter of Catherine of Aragon, saw Elizabeth as a living symbol of her mother's downfall and a threat to her own claim to the throne. When Mary became queen, suspicion and political intrigue led to Elizabeth's imprisonment in the Tower of London, the same fate that had sealed her mother's doom. For weeks, Elizabeth lived with the constant fear that each day might be her last. Through it all, Elizabeth clung to her education. Books became her sanctuary, and learning her refuge. She became a brilliant scholar, fluent in Latin, Greek, French, and Italian, and her intellect set her apart from her peers. Her mind became her fortress, a place no jailer could reach and no enemy could breach. She couldn't control the dangerous politics swirling around her, but she could control her intellect, her discipline, and her resolve. In a world where her fate was often decided by others, her mind was her own. This period of quiet survival, of watchful waiting and careful study, became her training ground. It was here, in solitude and uncertainty, that she forged the skills she would one day need as queen. It sharpened her judgment, taught her patience, and gave her the tools she'd need to rule wisely and decisively. Her difficult childhood didn't break her. It made her formidable, instilling in her a strength that would define her reign. Elizabeth's early years forged a queen who would not be easily defeated, a woman who learned to survive against all odds. She learned to turn adversity into strength, and in doing so, she laid the foundation for one of the most remarkable reigns in English history. When Elizabeth became queen at just 25, she stepped into a world fraught with peril and uncertainty. The kingdom she inherited was divided by religious strife, surrounded by powerful enemies, and haunted by the memory of her mother's execution. Few expected a young woman to survive, let alone thrive, on the English throne. Yet Elizabeth was not an ordinary monarch. She was one of the most educated women of her age, having received a rigorous humanist education that rivaled any prince's. Her childhood was spent immersed in books, learning from the finest tutors in the land. Fluent in Latin, Greek, French, and Italian, she could read the classics in their original tongues and correspond with foreign rulers without a translator. Her mastery of languages was not just a scholarly achievement, it was a powerful tool in the dangerous game of European politics. Elizabeth wielded language as a diplomatic weapon, using her eloquence to charm, persuade, and outwit ambassadors and adversaries alike. Her speeches inspired loyalty and awe, while her letters confounded even the most seasoned diplomats. Her intellect impressed and often intimidated the powerful men of her court. Many underestimated her at first, only to find themselves outmaneuvered by her sharp wit and keen judgment. She listened carefully, weighed every piece of advice, and made her own decisions, building her reign on a foundation of knowledge, caution, and strategy. Elizabeth understood that information was power, and she gathered it relentlessly. In a world that doubted women's ability to rule, Elizabeth's sharp mind became her greatest asset. She spent long nights reading, writing, and reflecting, always seeking to stay one step ahead of her rivals. Nowhere was her intelligence more evident than in her refusal to marry. Suitors from across Europe vied for her hand, but Elizabeth saw marriage as a dangerous political trap. Choosing an Englishman would have divided her court and sparked jealousy among the nobility, while marrying a foreign prince could threaten England's independence and invite foreign influence. Instead, Elizabeth turned the prospect of marriage into a diplomatic tool. She kept her suitors and her enemies guessing, using the possibility of alliance to her advantage and keeping her options open. She famously declared herself married to her kingdom, transforming her single status into a symbol of devotion and strength. The people saw her as the Virgin Queen, wedded to England alone. This radical independence ensured that she alone held power for over 40 years, guiding her nation through war, intrigue, and uncertainty. Elizabeth's cleverness, resilience, and resolve made her a monarch unlike any other in English history. She became a legend in her own lifetime. Her mind, sharpened by danger and adversity, became the unshakable foundation of her reign and the key to her enduring legacy. Elizabeth's choice to remain unmarried was revolutionary. In a world where queens were expected to marry, she turned her single status into a political advantage. She played suitors and nations against each other, using the possibility of marriage as leverage. This diplomatic dance kept England safe, as no foreign power wanted to attack a nation they might one day rule. Elizabeth cultivated the image of the Virgin Queen, devoted solely to her country. Her persona inspired loyalty and unity, elevating her above dynastic squabbles. The cost was personal. She sacrificed companionship and children for her nation's security. Yet her decision defined her reign and cemented her legacy. Elizabeth's greatest gambit was choosing her country over herself. Elizabeth's reign faced its greatest threat in 1588, when King Philip II of Spain launched the Invincible Armada. The massive Spanish fleet aimed to invade and conquer England. Elizabeth rallied her people, famously declaring, "I have the heart and stomach of a king." The English navy, using speed and cunning, outmaneuvered the Spanish galleons. Fire ships and a fierce storm scattered the Armada, saving England from invasion. The defeat was a turning point, securing Elizabeth's legacy and England's independence. Against overwhelming odds, the Queen and her country prevailed. The defeat of the Armada sparked a wave of national pride and creativity. England entered the Elizabethan Golden Age, a time of cultural and artistic brilliance. Theaters flourished, with Shakespeare's plays capturing the spirit of the era. Elizabeth's court became a center of music, poetry, and portraiture, projecting power and unity. English explorers like Drake and Raleigh challenged Spanish dominance and expanded England's reach. Trade grew, and a sense of national identity blossomed. Under Elizabeth's stable rule, England transformed into a cultural powerhouse. The Golden Age was born from the security and inspiration she provided. Elizabeth's reign gave her people the confidence to dream big. Despite England's golden age, Elizabeth's throne was a lonely one. The burden of power meant constant scrutiny and isolation. Her refusal to marry left her without a partner to share the weight of rule. Betrayals by those closest to her, like Robert Dudley and the Earl of Essex, brought personal pain. The execution of her cousin Mary, Queen of Scots, was a heartbreaking necessity to protect her reign. As years passed, Elizabeth outlived her friends and advisors, becoming increasingly isolated. The vibrant court of her youth faded, replaced by a new generation who didn't remember her struggles. The price of her long reign was solitude. Elizabeth's sacrifices ensured England's stability, but left her surrounded by memories. The crown brought glory, but also profound loneliness. She ruled alone for her people until the end. Elizabeth's final years were marked by weariness and loss. The long war with Spain dragged on, and poor harvests brought hardship. Aging and increasingly isolated, she struggled to maintain her powerful image. The execution of the Earl of Essex left her heartbroken and withdrawn. As her health declined, she faced death with the same stubborn will that defined her life. On March 24, 1603, Elizabeth died peacefully, ending the Tudor dynasty. Her passing marked the end of an era. The sun set on the Elizabethan age, but her legacy endured. Elizabeth I left a legacy of resilience, intelligence, and leadership. She transformed a divided, vulnerable nation into a confident, unified power. Her reign brought religious peace, prosperity, and national pride. Elizabeth proved that a woman could rule as effectively as any king. Her story is a lesson in turning adversity into strength. She chose compromise over fanaticism, unity over division. Elizabeth sacrificed personal happiness for public duty, inspiring a golden age. Her life shows that leadership is about wisdom, courage, and service. One determined individual can change history. Elizabeth's legacy shines as a beacon for generations to come.